This podcast is brought to you by Rebel News. That's right. So if you want to support us, why not do it in a win-win fashion by shopping for yourself? One of my favorite things to do. Head to rebelnewsstore.com to pick the patriotic gear that pleases your heart. And while you're there, use coupon code DREA10 to save while you do.
Hello, my friends. I was thinking a little bit more about why the media party tried to cancel and succeeded in canceling the scrum after the second debate. And I think it's because they didn't want tough questions being put to Mark Carney. And we had some tough questions. Today, I'll share with you the tough questions that we had written that we never got a chance to ask because the CBC managed to convince the debate commission to cancel it. I think you'll enjoy some of the questions. Before I go, though, let me invite you to become a subscriber to Rebel News Plus. That's the video version of this podcast. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com, click subscribe. It's $8 a month, which might not sound like a lot of money to you, but boy, it sure adds up for us. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com. Hey, one more thing.
Hey there, Rebel News listeners. Do you have a business or cause that you want to promote to the tens of thousands of regular Rebel News viewers? Now's your chance. Whether it's ads on podcasts like this one, videos, our website, or even our digital billboard truck, Rebel News has your advertising needs covered. It's easy to get started. Just head over to rebelnews.com/advertise. That's rebelnews.com/advertise. Fill out our form and find out how Rebel News can help spread your message today. Don't wait. Advertise with Rebel News. Reach freedom-loving patriots and support our independent journalism.
You're listening to a Rebel News podcast.
Tonight, what didn't the mainstream media ask Mark Carney? It's April 23rd, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Shame on you, you censorious thug.
I'm still thinking about last week at the leaders' debates in Montreal because it was one of the strangest days of my life. The mainstream media are still talking about it too, especially the CBC, especially the French CBC for some reason. They're still writing about it, not the debates themselves, which are actually interesting, but our audacity as citizen journalists for wanting to attend and ask questions in the media scrum afterwards. I know that some media people care and some political people care and some critics of the media and politics care, but for normal Canadians, for millions of ordinary people, they just don't care. I mean, that's not the news. That was a sideshow. But why is it an obsession for the media party? Why? I think it's because some of them have become radicalized. They're starting to believe their own propaganda that Rebel News and Juno News and Western Standard and the others are like terrifying January 6 rioters or truckers or whatever their worst nightmare is. I tell you, the emotional outburst by several of the journalists felt like a mental breakdown, not a thoughtfully articulated criticism of us. I mean, here's one guy from the Hill Times.
Yeah, after you guys threatened to sue, so that that's why they got the 4 questions, because the commission...
You're making that up. You're lying again.
When did the CDC get 4 questions?
Yesterday.
Yes, after they had already told it to you because you threatened to sue.
You're lying again.
I'm not. Because you're don't you have a third-party advertising truck to go take care of?
You're lying
How
again.
much have you spent on third-party advertising this election? Between Rebel News and Ford Canada, companies you own both of, how much money have you spent to influence this election? I'm assuming in favor of the Conservatives. How much have you spent? Like, you're a journalist, you must be honest.
Zero.
So, Rebel News Limited, that you've set up, and Red Canada, which is owned by you, which is separate from Rebel News, which is also owned by you, which you want me to pull up the website? I can go one by one.
Control your emotions.
So, Ed, I know I'm just
You're out
enunciating.
of control.
Speaking quietly doesn't make your things any less
You're
bullshit.
completely out of control emotionally. And your facts are completely wrong.
All right,
You're
let's go.
embarrassment. What's your name? What's your name? You're suddenly shy.
No, I'm Googling.
You're Googling your name?
Alright,
Tell us who you are, tough guy.
Stuart Benson, Hill Times.
Student Benson, well, you're a disgrace to the Hill Times. And your facts are wrong.
You're a disgrace to journalism, buddy.
Actually,
Shut
here's
up.
the thing. I can do the job of one of me can do the same job you clearly need 5 reporters to do. So, am I the disgrace, or is it all of the people you needed to do the job I do by myself?
Yeah, that guy was cuckoo. And there was another guy from a left-wing outlet called Ricochet who was literally shaking while shouting conspiracy theories at me. Did you see that?
Because of you, we can't ask questions on behalf of the public. Because you wanted to have a media circus.
Maybe your ally shouldn't be trying to get the commission to do something unlawful.
It's embarrassing. Look at all of you. Look at all of you. What journalistic rationale is there to have this many people in the room? What journalistic rationale is there?
There's not 13 of us.
There absolutely are 13 of you. There absolutely are. I saw Cian Bexty coming over to Ezra throughout the debate.
don't know what
Cian
you're
Bexty,
talking
who
about.
supposedly has a different media outlet, was taking direction from Ezra.
You're wrong. Cian Bexley doesn't work for Rebel News.
So why did he come over to you 3 times for direction during the debate? He showed you on the he showed you his phone, and he took direction from you during this debate. So I don't think that
think I
Cian
was
Bexty
directing-
is independent of you.
You think
I don't
was
believe that.
directing Cian because we're friends?
We're not allowed to talk to people?
We have 5 people here.
He's shaking.
Which is much less than the CBC has. You've got to control your emotions. I know you don't like me or Rebel News, and that's okay. But
What I don't like, Ezra, is
What?
you preventing us from
How
being
have I
able to
done-
ask questions on behalf of the
How
public.
have I done that?
You created a circus here before
What
this
circus?
debate started.
Questions that
you
you don't
created
like?
a security incident.
What
you
incident
created
was
a
that?
security incident before
What are you
this
talking
debate
about?
started.
That guy from the Hill Times who
When
had a
you got
meltdown?
into a screaming match with people before this debate
What are you talking
started,
about? I didn't scream
and
at
that's the
anybody.
justification that has been used to cancel the Q&A. So the circus that you created before this
You're
debate.
making
Where did you
things
get
up.
this information?
I'm
Where
not
was
making
this
anything
screaming
up.
match? What are you talking
Where
about?
did you
I
get
was
these
there.
thoughts?
We were all there.
What are you talking about?
In the front of this room, right before this debate. You caused an incident that caused the security concern that got this Q&A shut down. So Ezra
that's not true. You're
Levant,
making
I blame
things
you
up.
100% for
Well,
the
you're-
Q&A being canceled
There's
here.
not.
Yeah, it was crazy. I think there was some mental health issues there. It's sort of cult-like, and I don't know. It was a bit like what we saw during COVID. You know, that phrase "mass formation psychosis," a kind of ultra peer pressure. For other people, though, it was frustrating that we worked harder than them. What I mean by that is we got in the line to ask questions faster than they did. We had perhaps better questions than they did. That bothered some of them who were a little bit lazy. For many, though, it was a content-based objection. Like I say, there were 4 CBC journalists that asked questions and 4 rebels who asked questions. No one complained that the CBC dominated the coverage because they asked liberal-friendly questions, didn't they? They hated our questions precisely because they were alternative questions, telling the other side of the story. We were freedom-oriented. We're not in the pocket of the government. And finally, and I guess it's related, is the fact that we aren't part of the great elect Carney movement. The CBC is in jeopardy in this election. If Pierre Poilievre wins, he says he will defund the CBC and scrap other, liberal plans to colonize the media. So everyone in that press room, not just the CBC, everyone was in there to save their jobs by saving Carney's job. And we were a threat to that. So they wanted to do all the question asking. Softball questions for Carney, hardball questions for Poilievre. That's really what it came down to. Here's an example. A few weeks ago, a mainstream media journalist asked Pierre Poilievre how many sexes there are. These days, that's a very relevant question, a legal question too. Take a look.
First day on the job, President Trump signed an executive order, the U.S. government only recognizing 2 genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally?
Yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as Prime Minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than men and women. I mean, if you have any other that you want me to consider, you're welcome to tell me right now.
Well, there's personally, I am a man. I am a, as people will say, cis man. There are people there who, they say they're gender neutral.
Well,
you are a man, yes. There are people there who say they're gender neutral. Yeah, they say they're gender neutral. They're a trans person. Is that something that you would recognize here? Whereas in the States, at least with their U.S. government, the way they're seeing it, there's only two.
I'm only aware of two, but I mean, if you come up with another list, then you're welcome to do that. But I'm aware of two, and as far as I'm concerned, we should have a government that just minds its own damn business and leaves people alone to make their own personal decisions. That's the kind of government I'm going to run.
Fair question. But when a citizen journalist asked that same question of Mark Carney, the CBC was outraged. Here's the question.
Alex Zoltan with True North. If you thought my friend's question was odd, you're going to love this one.
I'm glad you self-assessed that. Okay.
How many genders are there?
There, in terms of sex, there are two. Thank you.
My follow-up question then, do you believe that women, biological women, have the right to their own spaces, their own sports, their own change rooms, their own prisons, their own homeless shelters?
I think this is Canada, and that as a general objective, yes. But we work in where we value all Canadians for who they are, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a fair question. And here's the CBC furious about that question.
But Rosie, I'm curious what stood out to you, because at one point when some of those last questions came up, I just checked to make sure, no, we're in Canada. Because the identity politics questions have not emerged much.
This happens on the same day that the United Kingdom court ruled that woman and sex refer to biological woman and biological sex. True North is a very right-wing website, and there have been issues in the past with who gets allowed into these scrums and who's allowed to ask questions of the leaders. The commission, Debates Commission, was the one who decided that these people were allowed to come in and ask these kinds of questions. So there you go.
Here's another example. In past years, the mainstream media has absolutely savaged any conservative who wasn't for fighting global warming or carbon taxes or net zero or any of that. It was the number one theme of any questions they would ask in debates gone by, in interviews. Anyone, especially any conservative who said global warming wasn't important, was called a dangerous dinosaur. Get with that. I think it was definitely the number one issue for the media party. Until the moment it wasn't. Until the moment Mark Carney realized it was a vote killer, so he just canceled the carbon tax, or paused it, I think is more accurate. And the entire media party, every journalist who had just gone at it past conservative leaders like Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole, they just sort of nodded, and they all immediately agreed to forget about the issue of climate change just altogether. They never meant it anyways. They only used it as a weapon against conservatives. So when they said, our children's future is at stake, when they said it was the biggest issue of the age, they never meant it. So I think that's a big reason why they raged against us being in the debate scrum. And obviously the harsh reality that our very presence means that millions of Canadians are not satisfied with what the mainstream media are providing them, so they come to us instead, and we manage to compete somehow, or even outcompete with the mainstream media, despite having no money or government privileges. So it's all that, and it's pitiful. And when we were in the line, our Rebel team was writing up some questions for each leader. Now, we didn't, in the end, have a chance to ask questions of Mark Carney, and of course, they canceled the second night. And it's too bad, because he will never be asked the most basic questions, because he cuts off access to everyone except the reliable liberal media. You cannot get a question to Mark Carney. And since we'll never have the chance to ask them because he'd arrest us for getting too close to him, I thought I'd share with you the questions that we drafted. Here they are. Too bad the regime journalists won't ever ask them, but here are the questions that we had written to ask Mark Carney at the debate that the CBC pressured the Debates Commission into canceling. Here's one. What do you think of this? Your party, Mr. Carney, has been accused of anti-Semitism. Last week, Israel's prime minister went so far as to issue a public rebuke. Here's my question. Your candidate in Victoria, Will Graves, wrote after October 7th, quote, "People get kidnapped. It's a terrible thing that happens, especially in conflict zones. But they were kidnapped from Israel due to a massive failure of Israeli national security and are being held in a territory under active invasion by Israel. What else do you propose?" How many times can your candidate say things like this without people concluding that your party is in fact anti-Semitic? And how many times can you excuse comments like this without people concluding you are too? What do you think of that question? Here's one. It's about migrants and housing. In the last few years, Canada has added 2 million people each year between foreign students, temporary foreign workers, refugees, and regular immigrants. 2 million a year. You're an economist, Mr. Carney, and you understand supply and demand. How much of our housing affordability crisis is because of mass immigration? Or are you unwilling to criticize that sacred cow? I don't know. I wish someone would ask him that. Here's a question that we would have put to him about trans, although someone else beat us to it. Today, the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom ruled unanimously that trans women are not legally women. This could stop biological men from entering women's places like women's bathrooms, women's sports teams, and women's prisons. The United States has brought in similar policies through executive orders. Do you agree or disagree? Should trans women legally be the same as women? I think that's a good one. I had one on Chinese tariffs, too. Here's what I would have asked. Mr. Carney, you told us you're boycotting U.S. alcohol because of tariffs. China has put 100% tariffs on canola, which could cost Canadian farmers, primarily in Saskatchewan, billions. But they're Western farmers from provinces that don't vote Liberal. Have you boycotted anything Chinese because of that? I ask because you haven't put retaliatory tariffs on China either. In fact, I checked and you haven't even tweeted about it. Why? I think that's a good question. I think, frankly, all the other leaders should have been asked the same question. I don't know if you saw that in the debates, but they were all asked what American stuff they would boycott. But yeah, none of them said they boycotted China. Here's a question I wrote about pipelines. These are for Carney. We had questions for other leaders too, but Carney's the one who looks like he may be reelected. I said, you said you agreed with Greta Thunberg. You said you think we should get to net zero. You spent your career opposing oil and gas. You support C-69, Trudeau's restrictions on oil projects and pipelines. And you said Quebec has a veto over pipelines. But tonight you said you're for more oil production and pipelines. Can you answer specifically which pipelines do you support? Would you support Energy East or Northern Gateway or Keystone XL? Or is your answer just an abstract sentiment? What do you think of that? Here's one that I really would have liked. And had I had a chance, I think this would be the one I would have picked out of all of these. Obviously, we couldn't put all of them. When did you last talk with Xi Jinping? Your campaign has been rocked by scandal after scandal involving candidates who have expressed their loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party and who have participated in Chinese government activities, even while here in Canada. You have refused to condemn them. When you were with Brookfield, you had very close relations with the Chinese Communist Party, including their dictator. When was the last time you spoke with Xi Jinping or any member of the Chinese government or a Chinese diplomat? What do you think of that one? Here's one I wrote about Hamas. Last month, you said we all agree with Hamas, but your staff said you simply misspoke in French. Then a heckler called Gaza a genocide, and you agreed, but your staff said you didn't really hear correctly. Then you stood next to an MP who demonized Israel as the aggressor. Let me ask you a specific question. Do you support or oppose the weekly anti-Semitic hate marches in Canadian streets? I'd like to know the answer. Here's one about ethics. I said, when your candidate, Paul Chang, encouraged people to kidnap his opponent and hand him over to China, you refused to fire him and just waited a week until he resigned. And when your campaign staff handed out fake conservative buttons in a Dirty Tricks campaign, you didn't fire them either. You simply reassigned them. Both of these actions are unethical and possibly even illegal, but you refuse to denounce or disavow either of them. What message do you think you're sending about accountability and ethics? Think about that one. Here's one that I think should have been asked by other media like months ago. I didn't say this, didn't get the chance. I wrote, there are a lot of basic biographical questions that you just haven't answered and that establishment journalists haven't asked you, so I hope you don't mind if I do, I wrote. Last year, when you were interrogated by U.S. congressional staff, you told them that you lived in the United Kingdom. In your last tax return, what country did you say was your residence? Where have you been paying your personal taxes? When exactly did you move back to Canada? And has your wife returned too, or is she's still abroad? Why are you being so evasive about these things? Those may sound prickly and personal, but I think they're basic questions. Here's one I wrote about net zero. For years, you campaigned on reducing carbon emissions to net zero. And even when you suspended the carbon tax, you did not say it was wrong, merely that it was unpopular. And you didn't repeal the tax, you just temporarily set it at 0%. You said you support Greta Thunberg and that oil and gas jobs should be transitioned. My question, do you support or oppose Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's plan to increase the productions of the oil sands? I would like to have heard the answer to that. I don't know if we ever will. Here's one I wrote about the independent press. For years, our reporters have bumped into you at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and you would answer all of our questions. We thank you for that, and you said it was your duty to answer tough questions. But ever since you became Liberal leader, you banned us and other independent journalists from your press conferences and threatened to arrest any of us who try to ask you questions. What changed? Why are you so afraid to answer questions? And is this a sign of how you'll run the country, shutting out any voices of dissent? I had some Epstein questions too. I don't know if I would have gotten around to these. I don't know if they're that important, but here's one I wrote. I said, there are a number of conspiracy theories regarding you and Jeffrey Epstein, and I don't want to indulge those, but I do want to ask you about 3 incontrovertible facts widely reported in the British press that I hope you can explain. You were photographed socializing with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's sex trafficker. Epstein's client, Prince Andrew, threw a lavish party for you at Buckingham Palace. And your wife's family is listed in Epstein's notorious Black Book. I'm sure there's an innocuous explanation for all of this, but you haven't given it yet. Why? What do you think of those questions? I mean, you can like them or hate them, but don't you think they're fair and factual and interesting? And so don't you see why the media party worked so hard to get the second scrum canceled last week? Stay with us, more ahead. Well, it's less than a week to go in the election, and it is tightening up. The Liberal Party had a lead. Some polls said more than a 10-point lead, but now it's neck and neck. According to all the polls I've seen as late as today, the Liberals do have a lead, but it's within the margin of error. What is happening? Are they deflating? Is the honeymoon wearing off? Are people starting to think about other issues besides Trump? Joining us now to talk about this is my old friend and former president of the Liberal Party of Canada. His name is Stephen Ledrew, and he's a journalist in his own right. Stephen, great to see you again.
Love to be with you, Ezra, as always.
Well, thank you for joining us. You were part of the Liberal Party corporate structure. You were the president of them a generation ago. Who is behind the scenes of Mark Carney? Because he sort of was planted here. He's been away for a decade. Before we get into how the campaign's going, who are the party bosses running things? Is there an old guard? Is there who are the insiders? Is it Gerald Butts again?
Yes, it is Gerald Butts. Let me just go back and provide some background to it. I was president, the longest serving president. I put in literally tens of thousands of hours of volunteer time to the Liberal Party when it was a Liberal Party. It stood for fiscal responsibility and social progressiveness. And the party has really been dismantled over the last 12 or 13 years by Justin Trudeau, or actually more specifically, not Justin, but by Mr. Butts, who you mentioned, and Katie Telford, They were the operatives for Trudeau, and their intention was to wipe out the party. The Liberal Party was an institution, as you well know, the most successful political party in the world, and it had members. You had to buy a membership. You had to, really, it worked at making itself a social political party. Now it's not a political party. It is the Justin Party, notwithstanding that there's a new leader. Mr. Butts is still there in charge. He ran Mr. Trudeau for the last 10 years as Prime Minister. He ran the Premier of Ontario before that, and he has reduced the party, Ezra, to a show of just 2 or 3 people. And that was evident when people saw Carney being sworn in as Prime Minister, Ezra. I watched that. And there was Mr. Butts near the front row, right behind the cabinet ministers, at that swearing in at the Governor General's house, Rideau Hall. He is still there. He is still calling the shots and causing things to move in his direction. He hired the Prime Minister's wife for a company called Eurasia out of New York. Eurasia consults with other countries around the world, other companies around the world. It has made millions of dollars from contracts with the Canadian government, when in fact, Butts' best friend Justin was the Prime Minister. So it's a very inside crew. It used to be that the insiders numbered hundreds, senators, MPs, volunteers like myself. Now the only people that really count are just a few people who are running the show. And they, I'm told as recently as yesterday, are quite convinced that they are going to have a majority government after Monday night. As you pointed out, Ezra, the polls are tightening. I voted in a rural community in the advanced poll, and as you and your listeners and viewers know now, the highest advanced poll turnout ever. Usually, and you and I have been around politics for a few years, Ezra, usually that, to my mind, is let's kick the bums out. We want to get rid of these people, get new people in there. But this is a crazy campaign. It's been a very unique campaign, as you have and your reporters have cataloged since the start. It's a very unique campaign. There's a fair degree of insanity. I think that for Canadians to be worried that Trump is going to turn us into a 51st state is insane. The mainstream media keeps playing that. What's he going to do? Send in the army and take over Canada? I mean, this is just some Canadians, as a result of the media, mainstream media, have the wrong ideas, the wrong concerns. I think that Canada should be concerned about its disintegrating economy, about its disintegrating society, and look at Carney, who, as you say, has not been in Canada for years and years, has never been elected. There's an article in the Toronto Sun today that I penned saying that we need a parliamentarian. We aren't electing a president, one person in charge. I mean, Canadians think that from the American media and mainstream media. We elect MPs, as you well know, Ezra. You're well versed in this. You've been in Ottawa for years and years. You know the system. It's a parliamentary democracy. We elect MPs. The MPs, the most MPs in one party, have their leader who becomes Prime Minister. To become Prime Minister, as you well know as well, is not an easy job. You have to know Parliament. You have to know committees. You have to have the give and take. You have to know how to work out policy with your own party members in opposition. Carney has never done any of that. I mean, we are electing, or seemingly, if the polls are accurate, and Liberal insiders are accurate, Ezra, we are putting somebody in that job who has never been elected dog catcher, much less a member of Parliament. So I think it's a crazy time, Ezra.
Well, let me ask you about one quirk. A year ago, I saw a poll out of the United Kingdom that young people, 18 to 24, it's a YouGov poll, only 1% of young people plan to vote for the Conservative Party in the UK. It was so discredited with the youth. And I remember 10 years ago, Justin Trudeau really had a youth-oriented campaign, in part through the promise of legalizing marijuana. He was the young person's candidate. He was hip and cool, or at least by Ottawa standards he was. Now, the most astonishing thing to me about the polls is how overwhelmingly young people for whatever reason, and I think I know the reason, support Pierre Poilievre. I think it's the affordability of homes and economic, and can I start a family? It's totally flipped. Why are boomers and seniors so attracted to Mark Carney? I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from you. I mean, it just seems the opposite. When I grew up, it was always young people were progressive, old people were conservative.
Well, I think that the old people are still conservative, but the new conservative is this Butts-led Liberal Party. I had that conversation with somebody who lives, again, in a rural community, and they were surprised at the number of Liberal signs up. And they started to talk to people. And most of the people with Liberal signs were over 55. Some were retired with healthy gold pensions from government. Others were still working for government. People who are 55 and over are in pretty good shape, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And they don't want anything to disturb it. So they are happy, they are satisfied, they are content. They like the government checks coming in. So they are voting for the status quo. Young people they read, they know that our GDP is going down the toilet. As I quoted today, Canada's GDP is less than that of the state of Alabama. I mean, which is one of the worst in the United States. I mean, our economy is toileting, and young people know that when they say, "Well, we can't even rent a house, much less buy one." Ezra, jobs are hard to find. Good jobs. They know that the Trudeau government has thwarted the economic progress of Canada. They know that the world would love to buy our clean burning natural energy. And these governments and Carney himself, Net Zero Carney, read his book and values. He wants to do the same as Justin Trudeau. He says, as you were there for the debate, as Blanchard pointed out, well, you say in English Canada, that you're having pipelines. You say in French, you're not having pipelines. I mean, Carney is I think he's a bit of a con job.
Yeah.
And I think young people know that, Ezra. They see that.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, Stephen, it's great to catch up with you. Thank you for being so candid. And you are a symbol of what the Liberal Party once was, when it was sort of the great party of the center, the party that absorbed good ideas where they came from. Now it is very much a radical force, and it's astonishing that it really has been colonized by Gerald Butts and that Eurasia group. It's just fascinating. We got to run, but I hope we can keep in touch, maybe even on election night.
I think you just called me an old fart.
No, okay. I'm the same.
You and I are friends.
I'm the same vintage. Almost. Take care, my friend. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Ezra. Bye-bye.
There he is, Stephen LeDrew, journalist and former president of the Liberal Party of Canada. Stay with us. More ahead. Hey, welcome back. Your letters to me. John P. says about Pierre Poilievre, quote, he should focus more on immigration. I think you're right. He sort of hid that away. I suppose it's because any conservative is worried about being called racist, but I think immigration is such an acute issue in this country. I think a lot of shy voters would support it. J.C. Nayland says, this is the biggest and most important election in Canadian history. You know, I think you're right. I really think, I don't know if we can come back from another Liberal win. Toggle says, even if the Conservatives pull off a win, and let's say the Liberals were pretty close, it still should be very concerning that there are a lot of people in Canada willing to reward 10 years of failure. You're exactly right. And I think it would be a bloody shame. And I hate to say it, but I think Trump scaring the heck out of sensitive Canadians is probably what added 10 points to the Liberals and took 10 points away from Pierre Poilievre. Wouldn't that be a shame? As Poilievre says, it would give Trump a weaker negotiating opponent, wouldn't it? Well, that's our show for today. Until tomorrow, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night, and keep fighting for freedom.